Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Climate Cafe, the place where we have conversations with people from all walks of life who are passionate about climate change and sustainability. My name is Deepthi.
And I am Vidya. Today, we have a very distinguished guest with us who brings over more than 2 decades of expertise in the field of climate change and renewable energy, and also is the founder of Subbarao Consulting Services. Welcome to the show, Dr. Srikanth.
Thank you, Vidya and Deepthi. It's a pleasure to be part of this initiative.
Srikanth, would you like to tell us a little about your early life and background and what ignited your passion for climate change and renewable energy?
Yeah, sure. Looking at my early life, I think I'm old, but I'm not old. I'm past 50. My early life, my childhood was in a very beautiful part of Karnataka that's called Coorg. I grew up among the coffee plantations, and then that's where my primary schooling happened. After that, then I moved to a city called Bangalore, wherein I did my high schooling and then also my pre-university. After that, then I got admitted to one of the prestigious engineering colleges located in a city called Mysore. That's my hometown as well, called the National Institute of Engineering. Then I got admitted to the Bachelor's of Engineering in Civil and Environmental Engineering. So that's how my journey started.
Did you always know you wanted to work in the environment and climate change, or when did that start really? Because you said that you grew up around a lot of a scenic place, right? Is that something that started quite early on?
Yeah, it's a very good question. Yeah, in fact, to be honest, I didn't even have a clue in terms of, what I wanted to do, because I don't know whether we can, because it might deviate the whole topic about what we are talking here. But in India, and when we were growing up, I don't know how the situation is now, but um, then it was basically, it all depended on kind of, how you studied, what grades you achieved, and then that would eventually lead, or that would decide in terms of where you get admitted. So basically it was all related to how you performed in your college days, and then get admitted to medicine or engineering. And then if you are coming from an Indian background, you would obviously understand the nitty gritties in here. And then there is also wherein your parents always has a say in terms of what you are supposed to do. So this nothing related to the professional part of it, but I'm just giving you a bit of background about how it used to be then. Like I said, I don't know what's now, but yeah, that's how I got into the engineering course that I did.
Yeah, the Indian part which you talked about is so true. Like, I can totally relate to that. So, yeah, how this Subbarao Consulting Services happen? Like, what's the background journey of this?
Okay. Yeah, before even getting there, to Subbarao Consulting Service, because that happened during the later part of my journey. So once I completed my bachelor's of engineering, like I mentioned, it was like it used to be called as civil and environmental engineering, but I studied both civil engineering as well as topics related to environment. So once I did that, then my initial work was, I was very interested in civil engineering. So I was, because at that time environmental engineering, or focus on environment, was not as much as it's now. So basically what I did was I opted to do something in civil engineering. My father has a civil engineering background. He was an engineer with the public works department with the government. So he also encouraged me to try and do something as part of the civil engineering. So I started a kind of a, I would say it's a private business, although with limited experience, but with my father's background, I started kind of a construction of houses for private parties, like houses for the people whom their relatives or friends. So that's how I started. And then I don't know, maybe my lack of experience in the field, or some other reason it didn't go well. So I didn't end up well in that sector. So I had to change my focus. So what happened was, luckily, the institute where I did my engineering from, they had a kind of what I would say, kind of a autonomous body working on environment related activities. So it was called as a Center for Appropriate Rural Technologies. So that's wherein I thought I would like to work more at the grassroots level, because they used to work with rural communities, like looking at access to water, access to energy, and all those stuff. So, and then at that time, improved cook stoves, and then energy efficient cooking was also a kind of a key kind of focus. So I got involved in that organization for a year or so, and then I got to know, that was a kind of a very good experience, hands-on experience, which led me to working with kind of a bigger non-governmental organization located in Bangalore, wherein I expanded my kind of experience and knowledge on working on the rural community activities. So that's how it all started.
That's really interesting to me, because you would think that as someone who is so prominent in the field now, that this would be like your plan A, right? So it wasn't what you initially started with. That is quite interesting to hear. So I would like to hear a little bit more about how you kind of started to like get more involved and more passionate about climate change and renewables, and how that led to you eventually creating your own consultancy in New Zealand. So how did the journey get from you starting a civil engineering firm to ending up there?
Yeah, the thing is, as you know, failures in life, makes you explore, better opportunities, right? So I think I would, the failure that I had initially with my civil engineering kind of, venture really made me think in terms of, because civil engineering is something, it's like basically it was not unique in the way that basically there were so many, like the chunk of the engineering graduates who graduated were from civil engineering department. So there were no kind of a lack of knowledge or a kind of expertise in civil engineering field. But like I said, the failure that I the failure in my venture initially made me think that why don't I try something which is new. And then, like I was mentioning earlier as well, environment sector was not at all very prominent, and then people even made a kind of a fun of me when I joined the course with taking up the environmental field in engineering, that who is going to give you a job. That was the situation then, because everyone was doing other courses like civil, mechanical, computer science, electronics, etc. Environment was something like, it's like the last option. And then I thought, okay, I've done it, and then even though that's not a priority, then I thought, why don't I explore what could be done to in terms of giving it a kind of a new perspective, or how this sector, which is not so prominent now, could be kind of a potential in future for better opportunities for the communities. That was my whole focus then. So then what happened was, like I was mentioning, I joined this NGO in Bangalore, and I was working in this sector, rural community sector. Then I got an opportunity to do my master's in Germany. I should definitely thank my brother. His name is Shyam Sundar, who is currently a professor at the National Institute of Engineering in Mysore. Because he did this course earlier, so that was a kind of inspiration for me as well. This was a master's course on renewable energy. This was in a city called Oldenburg in Germany. So I applied, and then luckily I got selected. And then the advantage was I was given a full scholarship which covered everything, not only for myself, for my family, because I was already married by then. Sorry, I missed it. I got married in between these two jobs. So, and then that was a kind of a really, really good kind of an, what I would say, new avenue opened, for me. So I went there and did the course, and then that's wherein I got, the background knowledge, all the technical knowledge about renewable energy. That course was especially for renewable energy in developing countries, so it was quite useful. So that's wherein I decided that yes, this is the way to go. And then I came back from Germany, and I got a job in a city called Pondicherry. It's in Tamil Nadu. It used to be in Union Territory. I'm not sure whether how it's now, but there was a
Yeah,
firm,
it's every.
UK-based firm. It was called IT Power India. So I got a job there as a renewable energy expert, which gave me a kind of a very good experience working in the subcontinent. So we covered not only India but the surrounding countries as well.
No, that's awesome to hear. So you specifically wanted to work in developing countries from the start then, is that correct? Like because obviously now you work primarily in the Pacific, right? So like, would you say it started from the very beginning that you knew you wanted to work at this kind of grassroots level?
Yeah, definitely yes, Dipti. Because like I mentioned, my the job, environment related job, started with the rural communities in India when I used to work with the NGO. So then basically when I moved on to the IT Power India, that became my primary focus as well. But then I was working on a kind of a, not directly with the communities, but projects which were supported or funded through the UN or other development partners, focusing more on the community sector. So especially on renewable energy. So that's how it carried through.
Yeah, and I would also love to know how you got started in the Pacific, right? Because we've left you off in Pondicherry
Yeah,
now. So how
true.
did you get to the Pacific? Because that's very far away from Pondicherry.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah. No, like I was saying, my work with Power India. Then after a few years, I know it also helped me in kind of a building, contacts and networks with the relevant organizations working in India and abroad on climate change, renewable energy, and also knowing people who were working in this sector. So that was a good opportunity for me. So after a few years working there, then honestly, I got bored because it was kind of a job wherein, I don't know, it used to be then a typical corporate sector in India, wherein your own ideas didn't have any kind of a weightage. So what I wanted to do, my boss wanted to do something different. That's okay for a while for me, because the other question also was, you need to be kind of a financially kind of a strong in terms of take your own decisions, because without strong financial background, you can't, that's my perspective in terms of flexibility that you could have in terms of taking some risks in life and then trying to do what you want to do. So after a few years, I thought I had a kind of little bit of flexibility, and then I wanted to enhance my knowledge in terms of globally what's happening, because my work was more related to or more connected to the subcontinent. So then I thought I need to enhance my knowledge and learn more about what's happening globally. So that's when I decided I want to do my PhD. So then I was looking for places where I can go and do my PhD, and then there were a few options. One was Germany and somewhere else, and then this opportunity in New Zealand, it kind of I was more keen because one thing is I've seen New Zealand then only on TV during the cricket matches, because cricket, as you know, is a religion in India. So basically when I used to watch cricket matches in New Zealand, I used to look at the place, just the stadium, not the whole country per se, but just looking at the stadium, I would think, how can there be a place so beautiful on this, So then it made me like, basically, when this opportunity came through, then I thought, yes, this is where I want to go. And then, yeah, I'm not regretting the decision.
That's awesome. Yeah, like New Zealand is fantastic, right? So how did you find, I'm sure Vidya is also curious about this, right? Like, what was the process of moving across the country to do and yet another degree in another foreign country? What was that like?
Oh yeah, it was a challenge because I had my family with me, and then we all had to move. And then it's a different kind of a culture, different kind of an environment, and then basically, like I was saying, and I used to get a kind of a decent kind of a salary working in India, but when I came here, it was just a scholarship that I had, and then we had to survive on that scholarship for almost 3 years time. It was really challenging. It's not easy, I would say. I mean, for me it was not easy. Sorry, I'm not saying generalizing it, but for me there were quite a bit of challenges. But yes, I was able to finish my PhD in right on dot in 3 years time. That was the time given to me, because after that the scholarship would have run out, and then I would have had more problems. But I would like to thank my supervisor, Bob Lloyd, who is still in touch with me. And then he used to work with me. Sorry, he also helped me out on several assignments in the Pacific with his knowledge and expertise. But everything fell into place. That's what I would like to say, that I was able to complete everything on time. And then, yes, that's how the journey started with the Subbarao Consulting Services. So before I completed my PhD, like I said, I had to manage my family as well as PhD. And then the scholarship that I was getting, it was not enough, because in a foreign country, you always try to, when you are, when you have come from India recently, you always try to multiply it by whatever the currency exchange value, and then you compare things, and then you think, okay, it's so expensive here, and then it's so hard and all those stuff. But just to balance it out, I thought, why don't I start working part-time? And that's wherein my contacts and network that I had built in India came very handy. I started taking up small assignments as a kind of freelance consultant, as an individual consultant. So luckily, one of my colleagues from IT Power India, he was also working with the Asian Development Bank. And then it so happened that one fine day he just emailed me and said, okay, there is something coming up in Papua New Guinea. Would you be interested? With all due respect, and then I know I'm not kind of discriminating any country in the region, but PNG was one of the most difficult countries in the Pacific to work with, because of obvious reasons. I don't want to go into details, but that was my first assignment. And then I had to travel there. And then it was a really, kind of a very different experience for me. And that's how, my work in the Pacific started with PNG. Then after that, then there was an assignment which came up with Vanuatu through the ADB as well. So then slowly I got to know, my rapport with ADB. That's how it started to build up. And then I used to get assignments on a regular basis until I completed my PhD. So that's how my work in the Pacific started.
No, PNG is pretty tough, right? Like, I have a little bit of experience working in peace and conflict in Bougainville, which is this little autonomous region right near Papua New Guinea. And it's really difficult to engage with the community there because it is so war-torn and it's all quite recent conflicts and stuff. So yeah, it must have been like ripping the band-aid straight off working with the Pacific there.
Interesting, I think. Yeah, and since Pacific Island countries are highly vulnerable to climate change and several are on the verge of disappearing, And in fact, I read about Maldives. Like, it's predicted that 80% of the land will no longer exist in after 2050. And you have a vast experience in working in Pacific Island countries. So, like, what was your experience working in Pacific, and what are the challenges you think the communities and the whole country is facing?
Yeah, sure. Like you rightly mentioned, the low-lying islands across the globe are facing, kind of a severe threat in terms of, uh, like you said, some of the island countries might totally vanish. Maldives is one. There's one country in the Pacific you might know. It's called as Kiribati. So they're a very low-lying island nation with small atolls. It's just hardly less than 1 meter above the sea level, all the atolls. So, it was, kind of a very desperate situation for them recently, a few years ago. They started looking for land in Fiji to, move the whole population on that country to Fiji. So, it's a really scary situation because Pacific is a region. It's a kind of a very unique in terms of its geography, its culture, diversity. If you visit, there are around 14 countries in the Pacific, called as the Pacific Island countries, the group in the region. Each country is unique, and then each country faces all the similar set of issues related to climate change. But given the demographics, the variation within the countries, it makes it a bit more challenging. Like I said, geography is one of the major reasons, because these are all countries with small islands, group of islands, and there are some of the countries have more than 300, 500 islands, small islands, and then these are all dispersed islands. So, for example, if you want to travel from one island to another island, some of the islands, it might take 2 or 3 days on a boat ride. So, and then basically the communication recently it's improved, but it's not as good as other part of the world. So there are quite a few challenges geographically, and also in terms of the capacity within the country, I would say, because with the dispersed population, and then with the skilled kind of a workforce within each of these countries, it's very limited. And then even though some of the people on the islands, they acquire good skills in terms of, for example, for that matter, any skills. So the main problem or issue has been what you call the brain drain, which happens everywhere, but it's affecting the countries in the Pacific, because with the limited population, if skilled people they migrate to countries like New Zealand, Australia, elsewhere, then the situation doesn't change on the ground. So that's the key challenge there.
That's so interesting. Yeah, because you're so right. I think the brain drain is something that affects a lot of these developing or like emerging countries, right? So it's something that just like people get trained up and they move out and they don't come back. And it's something that we've heard a lot from people too. So that's interesting. Yeah. I wanted to ask why the Pacific, right? So after you finished your PhD, why did you choose to focus on the Pacific? Is it because you already had those connections and they were helping you like get projects there, or like what else made you want to focus your work there?
Yeah, basically, like I mentioned, when I started my work in the Pacific with PNG and then later in Vanuatu, then especially working in Vanuatu, it was a very really good experience for me, because all over the Pacific, I've worked in most of the countries in the Pacific. The people are very, very friendly. So, and then they are very accommodative. So when you go there as a consultant, you won't be treated as an official. You would be treated as a kind of a family member or a friend. And it's still, it's that kind of a situation wherein there is a lot of trust between people. And then when someone comes in to give them some advice, and then there is some expertise that's been shared, the knowledge that's been shared, it's like back home in India, wherein we treat our teachers as gurus, right? And then my memories from my school days and my college days, I don't know how it is now, but when our teacher is lecturing or telling us something, and then you don't dare to ask any questions, because that's the respect, and that was thought as the respect that you give it to the teacher, because teacher is someone who knows everything. But that might not be true. I'm not saying the literal meaning of it, but that's a kind of, it also goes back to the culture in each of these countries like India. I mean, for me, it gave me that kind of a comfort that I'm working in India. So that was the main kind of a motivation that I got, because I felt the cultural aspect of it was very, like, it like had a strong linkage to where I come from in India. So that's how I felt that it would be worth exploring, working with the countries in the region in the Pacific.
So was the people.
Yeah, exactly. It was mainly the people, nothing else. So like I was saying, people, even and I will just give you an example. Okay, after my PNG visit, I went to Vanuatu, and then that was my first visit, and then I didn't know anyone, for that matter, in Vanuatu, but and even then, and I'm meeting the people for the first time, I felt that kind of what do you call, the connection. I could connect very well in my first visit, and then I could go and see a minister. I also had lunch with the Prime Minister in Vanuatu, which I think because coming from India, yes, yeah, I mean, that's it's so simple. It's not so bureaucratic there. So and then that made me feel like how simple the life could be, right? So yeah, that was the main motivation. So basically, coming to the point in terms of why Pacific, like there are other regions in the world, I'm not denying that, but Pacific has been kind of, in my personal view, has been sidelined because of remoteness maybe, or because of other reasons. But nothing much has happened over past few decades in the Pacific. And then when I start working and start noticing in terms of what the ground situation is, and then what's happening there, the problem or the challenge that I saw there was, one was like with the manpower that I mentioned earlier. The other one was, there was a strong disconnect between what the countries wanted and what the development partners were trying to do in the region. So it didn't match. So what had happened was, basically, there the development, and I'm just giving this as a constructive criticism, the development partners or the funding agencies who support the countries on several initiatives or programs or projects. So what was happening was, the funding agencies used to push their agenda or what they wanted to do into the countries. So it was not what countries wanted to do. So then what happened was, essentially, there were like hundreds of programs that were implemented over decades, and then there was nothing tangible on ground. So these were all like reports, some documents that were prepared, and if I keep telling this to my colleagues in the Pacific, they have cupboards and cupboards of all the reports, and then it's all you can see the dust accumulated on those reports. No one has even touched it or read it. So it defeated the whole purpose, in my view. So basically, I thought there should be something that needs to be done, wherein the countries have their own voice in terms of what development means for them and what kind of development they want, and then they need to be in a position to raise their voice, put it up across to whom are concerned, and get some support in implementing these projects.
So this like advocacy role became more important to you, did it, as you continued your work in the Pacific? Because it wasn't initial, right? This like wanting to advocate and stand up for like these marginalized voices, right?
Yeah, and it started as me being a kind of a renewable energy expert or a climate change expert, and then slowly it moved on to the advocacy role. Yeah, definitely, yes. So I started working more with the decision makers within the governments, like with the directors within the department, and the government team, the policy making team, and you know supporting in terms of and then also advising them in terms of what best could be done to move towards whatever the targets and goals on renewable energy, climate change. So and then it helped in terms of improving the communication between the development partners as well. And I would say that you know presently the situation is much better. The countries and the governments have their own voice, and then they are quite kind of a very good position to kind of request the support that they need.
No, that's great to hear. Yeah. I just have one final question for you about specifically in the Pacific before we move on. I kind of want to hear about, you've been working there for like a long time, as you said. And I want to know about what you've learned from the people you've met and worked with, and how that's shaped your view or changed your views over the course of like the decades you've worked there, and how that's been impactful in your own work and your own perspective towards climate change, towards sustainability, towards working with grassroots people, organizations and grassroots communities in the first place. And I want to pick your brain about how that's changed your personal experiences, views, perspectives, so on. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's a good question, I would say, because my background, basically where I come from, from India, and then my approach to work, my commitment to work, and then my kind of connection with people were very different before I started working in the Pacific. I hardly used to talk, like I mentioned earlier, when I used to work in India, because of obvious reasons. Now, having started working in the Pacific, I would say it was kind of an eye opener for me too. One, because of the people, like I mentioned, and then how someone approaches the work to be done, and then how you can get something done without getting into too much of bureaucracy, and then even being informal, you can deliver what you deliver as a formal official. So because like I always go back to the point that I keep mentioning of the people there. People are fantastic. It's just that they need to trust you, and then once you do that, then you are like basically treated like one of them as part of the family. So that because this kind of approach, and then this kind of working environment, which was very different to what I got experienced working elsewhere, made me kind of think in terms of this is where the actual the meaningful work, I would say, can be done. And then when you do something, and then for the country, and then when people appreciate it, and then you feel so good that you have done something meaningful, and which have changed, or which have kind of influenced their lives, and to make it much better, and then move towards kind of a better kind of opportunities for them, and then better livelihood for them. So it's kind of a satisfaction that you get. One thing is money is one thing, but if you look at the kind of satisfaction and the gratitude, I think that weighs more than anything else. And that's I would say in the Pacific, I worked in other regions as well, in Africa and elsewhere, but in the Pacific, I think that's one of the key things which has really changed my approach to work.
That's awesome. So it's like personally fulfilling and rewarding, as well as tangibly being like productive towards building a more sustainable world, right? So that's amazing that you can have that both simultaneously and not have to sacrifice one for the other in the sake of bureaucracy or things like that. Yeah, thank you so much for letting us pick your brain for the last hour. It's actually been really interesting to learn about how you have like developed your thoughts about this over time, and it was nice to hear your journey. Was there anything else you'd like to add? Any final words of encouragement or?
Not really. I mean, I would just like to say that Pacific region needs more kind of a support. Like what we are doing. It's just a kind of a what I would say. It's very, very small. So if people like you, youngsters, if you would like to consider Pacific as the region where you would like to explore, I can promise you it won't disappoint you guys. So if there is any opportunity to work in the Pacific, or actually working in the Pacific is going there, being there, working with the people, that's the real experience. And then I wish that you all will have a chance to get this experience, and then see the real difference that one can make in people's life. Thank you.
Beautifully said. Thank you so much. Thank you again for coming, and thanks for sharing your knowledge with us.
Thank you so much, Srikanth.
Thank you very much, Vidya and Dipti. It was nice talking to you, and thanks for the opportunity.